Hello subscribers and watchers, welcome back. What's up again? This is me Saidalia here from Computer Science for Self-Taught. In today's video I'm gonna teach you how you can cache your data in cache storage. Well, whether it is the image that you wanna avoid downloading every time that the user opens your app or anything else, you can store anything in cache storage temporarily. Cache is the way to go about data that can be stored temporarily on your storage. It can be internal storage or external storage, which means you get control where your cache files are going to store. But remember one thing, that the cache data may be deleted automatically by the system if it falls short memory. Now let's see it. Well, the cache fills the storage space on your device, so sometimes you need to clear cache data regularly from your device and personal computer. And these cache data are the combination of scripts, files, and images that automatically stored on your device at the time of the browsing the internet. These cache data help you to speed up your browsing because the script, files, and images are loaded from the cache, which is stored in the device for a particular website. So here are a lot of questions that may come into your mind. So is it okay to clear cache data on Android? Well, there is no bad impact of deleting cache data from your Android device, as it takes the space in a storage area. Regularly deleting cache keeps valuable storage free, but for some websites you require to re-enter the name and password information as they are cleaned from the process of cleaning cache data from the device varies from the device to device. So how do you clear an app cache? Well, there are two ways to clean cache from Android device: cleaning as per app basis or cleaning all at once. Cleaning all at once includes all app web browsers cache. So the steps of cleaning cache data may vary from device to device. So this is it. Make sure that you go to your app manager, okay, and after that there will be the list of the apps that have been installed on your Android phone. So in here I'm going to clear the cache data from the Chrome. So I click on it, and in the below you can see there is an option that it says that clear cache. So make sure that you clear cache for this app or whatever app you want to clear cache data. Again, I'm gonna say to you that the steps of clearing cache data vary from device to device. In this device, the clearing of cache data from this phone is something like this. So there may be some steps that you need to check your phone to how to clear cache data from your Android phone. So now we are going to learn how to clean cache per app basis on Android. Well, you can clean cache from each app, such as a web browser or game, one by one on your Android device. To clean cache per app basis, follow the below mentioned steps. So these are the steps that you need to follow in order to clear data from your cache, okay? So make sure that you pause the video and delete all the caches from your Android device. First you need to do is open the device settings and tap on storage memory or storage, and the word in here may be different, storage memory, okay, different from device to device. Tap on cache data that displays the total amount of cache data of your device, and then a pop-up screen will appear that if you want to delete the cache data from your Android phone or not. So there may be a question left on your mind, that what are the benefits of cleaning the cache from the device? Well, a question arises here: if the device's cache held in fast web browsing and apps data loading, why you need to clean cache data from time to time? Well, to answer all of these questions, I'm going to answer these questions for you guys. So the first one is, the main reason behind the cleaning devices cache is when you face specific issues with an app or website, maybe the images are not displaying well on your phone, or you're having a problem to log in. Okay, this is one reason that may answer to your question. And the next answer for all of your questions is that I can say that if you clean the cache data from your Android device, it will help you to regain the valuable space on your Android device. Imagine that if you never clean the device cache, your device occupies GBs of storage spaces in your phone. The next answer is that if your application or the web browser that you have opened in your Android phone and it doesn't load the latest version of a page, make sure that you clean cache data from your device, because cleaning cache data can force to update it. So the next question that may come into your mind is that, what about cache cleaner apps? There are several cache cleaner apps available on Google Play Store, and it promises to clean all caches from your phone, like unused photos and videos from your phone quickly and safely. However, there are several reasons about not to use these steps. Well, if you wanna get my opinions about these cleaner apps, is that make sure that you do not use these apps to clear caches from your device. Well, what to do then? Then there are some apps in your phone that they do this for you. It is a built-in app that has come with your Android phone, and these cleaner apps that you wanna get from Play Store and you wanna clean the caches from your device, and they may sometimes make false claims like cleaning cache data will adequately increase your phone's speed. Okay, and these apps occupy more space on your phone storage and even may slow down the performance as they continuously run in the background. So there may be apps in these apps that you have downloaded from the Play Store. If you get my opinion as a developer, and if it is possible, avoid the third-party app. Remember that your phone already contains a good cleaning system, so there is no requirement of any third-party app for this purpose. Now let's see what is cache. So as you know that when you store your data inside the files, and those files are stored in a folder files, so they are permanent files and they will not be deleted by the system. But there may be sometimes that you wanna store these files temporarily. Okay, but what you can do is you need to put these files inside the cache folder. Okay, so you need to cache them, because caching these files temporarily occupies the space on your Android. So there are two types of cache storages if you want to store your files in them. The first one is internal cache. Okay, and if you want to store your files temporarily into the internal cache, make sure that you call the getCacheDir method, because it returns a reference to the internal cache. But when you want to store your cache files into the external directory, so call this method getExternalCacheDirectory, which returns a reference to the external cache. So to create a file inside a cache folder or directory, make sure that you use the folder class. Okay, otherwise you will not be able to create files inside the cache directory. We will see in the upcoming minutes, we will see how to store our files into the cache directory by using the file class. So this is the path of your cache directory. Okay, it may be different from external or internal cache directories. So to store your data inside the cache directory, so call the getCacheDirectory, which returns the directory to the internal cache. Okay, by using this method you gain a reference to the internal cache and store that inside an object of file. Okay? And then create another file object, and in the constructor of that file use this object which I have created earlier and call the getAbsolutePath, which it returns a string value. And then put a comma in here, then put the name of your file that you want to store inside your internal cache directory. Okay, so in order to write to this file in the cache directory, we use the object of file output stream. In the constructor of file output stream, we pass the object of the file for writing our data into the internal cache directory, and for retrieving or reading the data from the cache directory, again call the getCacheDir. Okay, store the reference of it in the cache dir object, and then pass the object, and then create another object file and pass the object of cache dir in here. Again, in here you do not need to call the getAbsolutePath, as I have done this earlier in here. Okay? And then put the name of the file that you want to read from the cache. For reading the file from the cache directory, we use the object of file input stream, and in the constructor we pass the object of the file to it so that we can read the data from the file that we have already stored inside the internal cache directory. So the most important things you need to remember that when the device falls low capacity, so the operating system may delete these files automatically, okay, in order to recover space. But you must not rely to the system to clean these cache files for you. In order to clean these cache files by your app, and make sure that in some place of your code write some methods to clean these cache files by your app. Do not rely to the system itself, and always maintain your cache files in the limit of 1 MB. Okay, as a developer I recommend you that if you want to store your files inside the internal cache, directory, make sure that you stick with the limit of 1 MB, okay? And when the user uninstall your app, so the app itself is going to uninstall or delete these files by itself. And if you want to give your preferred size for your cache files, make sure that you use the external cache directory, and you can use your favorite size for your cache files. And make sure that you do not overload the user's SD card with the cache files. In a couple of minutes we will be working out on a nice example how to read and write the data from the cache file. So this is our example, okay? In the first activity we have a save button and a next button. When I click on the save button, it's going to get the data from those edit text boxes and store them inside the cache storage. And when I click on the next button, it's going to take me to another activity, which is activity B. So in here, when I click on the load button, so it's going to retrieve the data from the cache storage and loads them into the respective text fields, okay? And when I click on the back button, so it's going to take me back to main activity. So let's work out on a nice example and see how to retrieve and store data into the cache storage. So now let's work out a nice example on retrieving and storing cache data into the cache storage. What I'm going to say to you guys is that when I put the values into edit text boxes, so when I click on the create cache file, so it's going to get this data and store it inside the cache storage. So let's see how to store our data inside the cache storage, okay? There are two buttons, save and next, which I have already registered them to their respective listeners. When I click on the save button, so it's going to call the cache dir, which is a method in here, and when I click on the next method, so this is the method that is gonna take me to another activity, which is B activity, okay? To store your data into the cache storage, it depends on you to choose internal cache or external cache. To get a reference to the internal cache storage, make sure that you call the get cache dir, which returns an object of file, okay, a reference of file, and I'm going to store that inside a file object, okay? And that's it. So as I've told you before, that if you want to create a file and when you have done writing into that file, so you need to store that in some place. In order to store that inside the cache storage, so we use the file class, okay, to create our file. And in the constructor of the file, I'm going to call the method, so I'm going to rename this as cache dir. So now I'm going to use this object and call the get absolute path, okay? And now put the name of the file, mytext.txt. That's it. Now we have created a file inside a cache storage, and in order to write to this file, we use the object of file output string. Out equals to new file output stream, and the constructor requires a file parameter, so I'm going to pass the file object which I have already created. So there may arise an exception that this file is already deleted by the system, so there may be a chance that this file does not exist. So you must handle the exceptions, so you don't want your app crashes or closes. So I'm going to surround it with try and catch. So again, if I want to write to this file, so I use the object out.write. So in here, I'm going to take the username and passwords from the respective edit text boxes, okay? So again, I'm going to create a string class. So it's going to take a lot of space. I'm going to use the object of a string builder, okay? Builder equals to new builder, and that's it. So again, I use the object of builder.append, okay? So I use the edit name dot get text dot toString, okay? And again, I provide a separate space for it, and I use again the object of builder dot append edit password dot get text dot toString. So now we have the username and password inside the builder object, and now we use the builder object to put the data inside the write method. So in order to write to the mytext.txt, so I use the builder dot, I call the substring. So this is the value that we have stored inside the builder class. In order to get the data, so we don't want to get these data at the same time, so I use the method substring to read the data from this 0 index up to the space, okay? So this is what I call the substring, and again in here inside the substring method, I use the builder object again, and I do not use the builder object. I provide 0, okay, because it's going to start reading from this index 0 up to the builder dot index of spacer. So it's going to read the data from this 0 index up to the space. So again, we need to cast the data into the bytes, get bytes. And again, there may arise an exception that writing data to the file. I do not add an extra catch class in here, catch statement in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the parent exception, which is exception itself. So now let's going to write the password into the file mytext.html. I use the out.write, okay, builder.substring. So in here I use the builder.index of space. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it to 1. Give me the index of this space, plus 1, which becomes the index of 1. So I'm going to reading the data from 1 up to the end. And now I need to convert the data into the bytes. And that's it. And again, we must flash it. And don't forget to close your files in order to save resources. So I've made a mistake that I must initialize or create the object of file output stream and outside the catch class. So in order to access the object of out into the finally method, so I use the out object here. And again, I'm going to provide a condition. If out was not equals to 0, so close out for me. And when the data saves successfully, so I'm going to toss a message to the user, saved. So save successfully to the cache, okay, and that's it. So there may again arise an exception for closing the file. The system itself does not allow your app to close the file. So again, I'm going to cast this to try and catch. And again, load the data from the cache storage. So again, I'm going to call the get cache dir. So it returns a reference to the internal cache. I'm going to store that inside a file object. And in here, I must use again the file equals to new file. So I'm going to pass the cache dir. Make sure that you do not call .get absolute path. If you use get absolute path by cache dir, it may not arise an exception. So now I'm going to put the name of my file, which I have already created here. In order to read the data from the internal cache and from my text.txt, I'm going to use the object of file input stream for reading the data. And in the constructor, I'm going to pass the object of file. There may arise an exception, so again I'm going to put it inside the try and catch block. So I must initialize it outside the class. Read equals to. So again I use the while loop for reading the data from a file. Okay, I'm going to use the object of input stream read dot, and I call the read method. So it's going to return the data in the format of zeros and ones. So again, I'm using the end data and initialize this to 0. Okay, so now I store that return value inside the data object. So again, there may be arise an exception to catch class. Okay, so now the while requires a boolean value. What I'm gonna do is, so I put that inside here, and I say that if it was not equals to -1, okay, which means, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to check for the condition. If it was not equals to -1, which it doesn't reach to the end of the file, so keep iterating and read the data from the file and store that into this data variable. Okay. And when it reaches to the end of the file, so it's going to return -1 and store that inside the data variable. And when this data variable was equal to -1, so it's going to stop iterating from the while and it start reading data from here. So now we need to store that data inside a variable. So I'm gonna use the object of a string buffer. Buffer equals to new string buffer. And in here I use the buffer object dot append. Okay, so the data is in the form of 0s and 1. I'm going to convert that to character, and I put the data in here. So now to read the data, got all the data into the buffer object. I use the edit name dot set text. So now I use the buffer and I call the substring. It starts reading from index 0. Okay, again buffered up to the space, and I use the edit password dot set text. So I use buffer dot substring buffer dot index of space +1. I use +1 in here because I have the data like this: Android space 1 to 3. Okay, in here I said that it starts reading from this index 0 up to the space, which is in here. So it's going to return me the Android value, and I set that inside the edit name text box. And now we have to get this value, okay, 1 to 3, which is password. So again I use the object of buffer string, and I call the substring method, and inside the substring method I said that it start reading data from this index, which is a space. Okay, so now I do not want to read this space, I want to start reading from 1. So what I'm gonna do is I add 1 to this space, which becomes this one. So it's going to start reading from 1 up to the end. So make sure that again you need to close your streams. So what I'm gonna do is make sure that you close that inside the finally statement, and make sure that you provide a check condition if read was not equals to null. So close read for me, and there may arise an exception while closing the file, so I'm going to handle this, and I'm going to toss a message in here that dear user, data loaded successfully from your internal cache. Loaded successfully. Toast.lengthlong.show. That's it. Let's run and see the output. So I'm going to provide Android and password 123, and I click the create cache file. Okay, it says that saved successfully to the cache file. When I click on the next, it's going to take me to activity B. When I click on the read cache file, so it's going to retrieve those data from the internal cache file and put them into their respective test view. So again I provide data like subscribe and the password as to my, okay, I provide a space in here, to my channel. Okay, and when I click create cache file, so when I click on the next, so it's going to read the data from the internal cache and put them into their respective text views. And again, if you want to read the data from the external cache directory, what you need to do is you need to call the get external cache. So I'm going to pause it with you. So again, if you want to access to the external cache directory, make sure that you call this method. Okay, and the remaining things are the same, you didn't need to change anything. And again, if you want to read the data from the external, make sure that you call the get external cache direct, and the remaining things are the same for reading the data from the external cache directory. Let's run and see it if it works correctly or not. I provide Android and password 123 and click create cache file. The file is created, and read it. Okay, that's it. So this brings us to the end of this particular tutorial, and in the meantime, if you guys do like what you saw, make sure that you leave us your thoughts in the comment boxes below this video and support us in any way you can. And don't forget, and if there is any tutorial you want to learn, make sure that you name it in the comment boxes below this video. I will try to create these tutorials ASAP for you guys. So have fun learning. Peace out. I will see you in the next video.